Alright, so begins another draft physics video presentation. Mostly just comments, I guess. See where it takes me. I did find another physicist type person that I will inquire. Retired physicist. Sounds pretty smart and all that kind of stuff. But the willingness to discuss any of these alternative ways of viewing, the history, and just kind of pointing out that their physics is kind of vulnerable to the accusation that they've just jumped from guru to guru, Dirac to Einstein to blah, blah, blah. And, that none of it's been as well evidenced as it should be to declare it as a truth. So there's lots of things stated that they've never really proven, with any hard evidence. It's all kind of mushy circumstantial evidence. And so this is like sort of a, where you never ask anybody for credentials. I know you create a world that's just full of judges that aren't really judges and doctors who aren't really doctors, and everybody's in a position that they haven't really earned and that they really shouldn't be in, and all of that crap. Oh, it disappeared. Yeah. 2 + 2 physics there. I'll put it over here. Anyway, well, we really don't need the ring of fire. Blue fire. Anyway, it's a nice little effect, I have to say. I will say. I don't have to say it. But we'll do without it. Thank you. And sort of get to business. So we'll do this and get to making the video. So anyway, it's just all under evidenced. They haven't proven any of the stairs. They've gone up the staircase, and the staircase is just left with a bunch of unproven facts, and they just keep declaring them, well proven, and they're not well proven. And things is glaring. I mean, I've already shown how the two-slit can be understood as being something else. There's an alternative explanation that's really simple. And I already provide the alternative explanation for the experiments where they use 2 sources. And I sort of explained the paradox of what they're saying, right? Because 2 independent sources would be like 2 light bulbs or 2 laser beams without going through any slits. We know we can't bang laser beam into laser beam and make the laser beams do anything. They won't create any pattern. But somehow radar does. Well, the catch is we can't make 2 laser beams that have the same phase. But even if you could, you're still saying the argument is that some of the phases would be randomly the same from 2 light bulbs. I mean, some of the photons would be in the same phase and they would hit each other, and there should be some pattern. And there's no pattern. There's no indication of any wave functions, nothing interfering with itself, certainly not. So, it leaves open the question, how can you say it can happen with radar without any slits, just having 2 sources, and the only difference is that you have the 2 sources in phase. I mean, phase is important. I mean, phase is what the whole story is, because when you get to the polarizing film, they have this idea that they're blocking light, and all you're doing is changing the phase. No one's countered my argument that a piece of polarizing film really isn't blocking any of the photons. There's nothing harshly opaque that the photons crash into and they stop. It's all transparent. That's why you can see through the damn thing, mostly. I mean, it only degrades the light by 10% or something. You can mostly see through a piece of polarizing film. And all it's really doing is doubling. In some places there's 2 pieces of film, and the other places only 1. And so all you're doing is changing the phase twice in some locations and only changing the phase once in the other locations. And you're not destroying any of the light. You're just changing the phase of the quanta of light, the little bumps of light, the clumps of light, as Feynman would say. But anyway, they don't have any counter arguments for any of this stuff, and they just keep telling me we've proven it. You're an idiot. You're a flat earther. I mean, it's just pathetic, that this is somehow in their little world, just like the little crazy religious people. They'll just jump on any piece of flaw and say, that evolution isn't true because one of the scientists did something he shouldn't have done or something, and there's one fossil that doesn't fit the record, therefore the whole theory has to be thrown out. I mean, little desperate things like that. And their own history of their own science is full of these circumstances that, are easily understood to be, oh, it should be better than that. So again, the Eddington experiment, never repeated. 100 years to do it, nobody's done it with better technology, with comparable or better technology. 100 years, and yet they declare it a truth. And it's violated their most... So one of their elemental conclusions about reality and about verifying Einstein is violating one of their fundamental premises the most. So it's this huge violation of the obligation to repeat an experiment, and they just ignore that violation. And so obviously their bias and their prejudice is so obvious. That they're the ones selling a religion, and selling it hard, so hard that they'll sit there and again just throw gratuitously silly insults at people, and they won't even come close. They'll try to attack people in their personal life, do all kinds of bullshit because they're pointing out what are just obvious and kind of part of the historical record that they wish to ignore because they wish to believe. And that's all this is about, is a wish. They're wishing it's true because somehow they can make their life meaningful if it's a little woo-verse. They're horny for it, in some kind of gay way. But anyway, so the comments are just, some of them are just so stupid. You're just, what the hell is the point of it? Royal Redcliffe. Redshift displaced now in time and relativity. Redshift all moving away from we. What the fuck could that mean to anybody? Sorry, I couldn't make any sense out of that. I won't, but please, do better than that. Please. Alright, even if light was a wave, would it travel fast as it does? So, people just don't pay any attention, don't listen to anything. I mean, it really doesn't matter what speed the speed of light is, because everything functions based on it. It is the way all matter interacts with all matter. Matter interacts with matter basically by exchanging stuff moving at the speed of light. So if I made it twice as fast or I made it twice as slow, it wouldn't make any difference to us, because we're a million times, functioning on a level a million times slower. It takes a million events for us to, for the small universe to create an event we can see. So you need a million little events taking place at the speed of light before we can see the event. So all it would do is just change how long it takes for us to see the event, and we'd still count that as 1 second. Wouldn't make any difference. Perception and function would be exactly the same. So the speed of the force is irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant is the fact that it's less than instantaneous. It moves slower than instantaneously, therefore there's a universe. If it was instantaneous, then there wouldn't be any events, because they'd all have to happen at the same time. And they can't all happen at the same time, so we're stuck with some speed. But whether it's all a matter of using words like fast in the context of the speed of light is silly, because I could argue it's a very slow speed. Compared to instantaneous, it's really slow. But whatever. It's obviously all way above your little heads. Blah, 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 blah. Alright, so this was an interesting pile of mush that happened here. So we'll go through some of this mush. So a Patrick Taylor. So another no account producing no nothing. He's got little home videos, 30-second videos of absolute mush. Him trying to, at whatever, 30 plus, trying to flip his skateboard. Ooh, too cool. Anyway, the misunderstanding of wave functions in this video is almost comical. That's what it says. So what is, how can you possibly not misunderstand a wave function? Nobody can even talk about it. When they explain it, they say, you're not going to understand this. They overtly say it to you. Okay, it's not going to make any sense. It's not supposed to make sense. Your wave functions, right? But anyway, so to anybody, so I mean, and all the bizarre interpretations of what the wave function is, so you really think that a particle actually does go everywhere. All the possible paths it could take, it does take all possible paths, and it creates a new universe for each one of those. You really believe that kind of horse shit? You're pathetic. You're silly. You're so silly. You're so lost up the colon of nonsense that you're never going to find your way out. I don't I don't even know what to say. But anyway, this the idea. Again, I've already pointed out how you don't need waves anywhere. Waves aren't something that is integral. They're emergent. They're not a fundamental thing. There is no jellyfish at the core of the universe. All right? There just aren't. It just isn't in that form. Waves have to be formed by creating obstacles and interactions. And they're just not elemental. Yeah, I'm sorry to tell you. But I don't know. There's no way of understanding an elemental wave. It just does it. And it bends the magical, it waves the universe, it waves the nothing. Waves that are millions of times bigger than the thing they're interacting with. I mean, you still haven't dealt with simple arguments. The polarization of a photon. I did actually read an article that when you calculate how big an antenna should be, ideal antennas, it's 1/2 of the wavelength. So it might be that the polarization of a 500 nanometer light then would be 250 nanometers. But anyway, still huge. 250 nanometers is gigantic. An average atom is 0.5 nanometers, so it's at least 500 atoms. And you're saying that the little tiny electron inside of one atom creates the whole thing. He somehow creates a big giant disturbance like that. I don't think so. Show me. And you won't be able to do it. Anyway, I would be laughing if it wasn't more than 2,000 subscribers. So it's a completely vacuous argument. I mean, just absolutely no content in it. Doesn't respond to a single point I've ever made. None of the questions I've ever asked are answered. Can you show me a video on anywhere on the internet of anyone professionally, completely, and accurately describing the double slit experiment in terms of analyzing what goes in and what comes out, and actually doing it without fucking up? That is, citing evidence that doesn't exist, or producing the wrong pattern, or producing the wrong mathematical spacing. Can you come up with one that's actually accurate? I already know the answer to the question. No, you can't. Your physics is silly. Ugh, the evidence sucks. And you just keep evading that simple point. You're not proving the evidence to be great. You're not counter-arguing in any way that, it's comparable to the evidence for evolution. We've really proven this one. We've proven it as much as the round earth is proven. You haven't shown me any of this evidence. This mountain of evidence. Okay. Metamorph, wait till he starts calling the entire physics community liars and pedophiles. Well, if it quacks like it, blah, blah, blah. I'd call the whole human race liars and pedophiles, frankly. It's sort of in the history, in the record. It's sort of a truth. It's an unspoken truth. We know, the whole game we're playing isn't the real natural game, blah, 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 blah. So, but whatever. You're the people making stuff up. You're the one making accusations you can't back up with any facts. And even this statement itself, the tiniest percentage of my video is a critique of somebody's personal ethics. Critiquing, say, for example, Professor Lewin. I could sit there and say, yes, his assertion that there's two voltages in the same place is retarded. And then I could go on to his when he plays the game showing, radio waves. At 1 minute, he does the same experiment, and in one experiment he calls it a standing wave, proof of the standing waves, blah, blah, blah. And in the next experiment he's talking about exactly the opposite. Not a standing wave. with the same experiment. It's just so bad. You know, he was actually accused of, you know, playing hanky-panky with his students. You know, is that my fault? I mean, I could point out a few physicists have been caught, you know, sort of being pedophile-y. You know, is that my fault? I mean, I don't really do that, though. I don't sit here and make videos pointing that out. You know, maybe I should. Okay, you're in for a treat. So, just more nonsense, gibberish. Okay, unproven accusations don't have anything to do with 99% of the content of the videos, which are me drawing on that blackboard showing this, that, or the other thing and how it doesn't work. You know, their model doesn't work, my model does work. Those are the videos, and he's just gonna overtly, right in front of you, sit here and lie, and then to call somebody else a liar. I mean, it's just so pathetic. So where is their evidence? All right, I'm offering $1,500. Well, he's a short order cook. He should know $1,500 is a lot of money. To be mocked, to be ridiculed, to be debunked, to be shown to be a foolish, ignorant asshole. Okay, and there's no takers. Okay, so they could just do, you know, one of these channels with 100,000 subscribers. They can get some, you know, it's a free lunch for them, right? They get paid $1,500. They get to make a video that's going to be funny and interesting because lots of people show up because he's going to make fun of some one of those arrogant, you know, pseudo-scientific tinfoil hat people. Yeah, he's going to make fun of them and make big views, and they're not taking it. I'm paying them to do it, and they still won't do it. Oh yeah, sure, that's the truth. That makes sense. Anyway. This is just such bullshit. So, whatever. So, you know, there's just no capacity to have any respect for these people. Now, Metamorph is a guy who I've known from the past, and we had a dispute over, he's a nihilist, okay? And he's a nihilist talking about values. You know, he's doing all his little personal value story narrative in the context of somebody who doesn't think there are any values, that outcomes don't make any difference, that it's just as good if there's 4 million dead cats on the street or one dead cat on the street. It's all the same. Doesn't matter how many, doesn't matter how much. That's all subjective crap. We're just little whiny emotional things, and there's no logic to any of it. That's his belief. So, good reason to be suspect of him as a source of understanding or the truth. You can't even get that one right. Suffering sucks. You know, doesn't really. Just a matter of opinion. Yeah, right. Sure it is. All right, superior mind. I think someone was wrong about something. Ha ha ha. So it's so funny. It's quite a sense of humor you've got there. So I guess that's some sort of sarcasm. But seriously, if you really think something somewhere is incorrect, that's right. If you think I have somehow made these egregious errors and have done this egregious slander, then why don't you point it the fuck out? Why don't you show me the video where the two slit is done in a pristine scientific manner? Okay, you should state what and why you think so. Otherwise, the comment comes across as ignorant trolling. Well, frankly, it should come across as worse than that, in the sense that you're just defending for the sake of defending. It's your team, and you don't care, you know, what the truth is. You're just going to root for your side, and you're going to throw rocks at anybody else. You're a really bad fan. Because you're not really showing how you have integrity. You're showing how you don't. You're supposed to be in the strong, we're right position. That means you're supposed to have the liberty to behave better, not worse. Okay, or perhaps trolling the ignorant. Okay, so it comes across as ignorant trolling, or perhaps trolling the ignorant. So the claim is that now they're happy and proud to call themselves trolls. Ha ha, we're trolling you. You know, yeah. Oh, great counter argument. I'd be laughing if assholes trolls like you didn't make it to the front page of every one of his fucking videos. Yeah, I thought he had a comment here about how they're all going to get deleted. Yeah. Where's that? Well, maybe it comes later. All right, Metamorph. You're going to have to back that up with something, right? So that's a comment to his original comment, stating it's somehow all junk. He'll erase it soon enough, and there once again will be peace in the valley. So again, I respond to comments, but yeah, I do delete them when I've responded to them and when they're vacuous. I mean, if you were saying something somebody needed to hear, like some kind of, we're providing actual evidence that I'm wrong, then I'd leave the comment up. But you're not providing any actual evidence that I'm wrong about anything or done anything wrong or any of this crap. You're just a slandering douchebag on the internet. Alright, meanwhile, go catch some real science. Okay, we're asking you and begging you, show us the real science. Link me to some of this real science. Because I can't find it. I'm finding all the science where they just declare things to be true and they don't prove it or demonstrate it with anything called evidence. So you believe it fits reasoning senses that light, the light photon is bent twice as much as everything else that's bent. And that things like gravity and magnetism, although you don't think they're bent, why aren't they bent? They're the same thing, really. It's the same kind of force, moving the same kind of speed. Why isn't it bent at all? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and you're saying, okay, I can overcome that with the strong evidence, and yet you don't have any evidence, so, especially strong evidence. So, again, just more crap. And not this flat earthing hogwash. So, it's flat earth to dispute anything the authorities say. And this is an asshole who's lived his life outside of convention completely. So he's lived his life completely outside of doing anything the conventional right way. He lived like a bum, a drug addict, the whole thing. Living on the complete outside. And the asshole is sitting here defending the inside of the physics. Why? Because he wants to ride a unicorn. Ever since he was a little kid, he's just so desperate to ride a unicorn, and he doesn't want me to break his wonderful dream that someday he'll be able to find a unicorn and have a ride. A little unicorn pony. Ugh, just a suggestion. Yeah, well, take that and shove it up your skanky ass. Well, I just completed an interview with someone who resembles the host of this science blog. So he didn't really do that. So he likes to just play with words. So apparently what he has done is taken clips and quotes of mine, and now he's going to do an interview with those quotes. Pretend he's asking a question and that's my answer and some kind of bullshit like that. So playing little games. So instead of making anything kind of like a scientific argument or an argument from, take it seriously, no. He's just going to do mocking and buffoonery and call that a good argument. Oh, I made a good joke, therefore I should win. The best jokester wins. That's his theory of science. It's a really stupid theory. His whole fucking nihilist horseshit that you can't make a ought out of an is. Well, except if the is suffering sucks. Well, yeah, then you ought not to do it. Fuck. Shit. Too stupid. Alright, resembles this host of this science blog in many aspects of his thinking. Haven't transcribed it yet. Yeah, so he's still writing it, I guess. But it'll be up on my blog eventually. Stay tuned. Well, how fucking exciting. Just can't possibly wait. Oh, maybe I could. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and as far as trolling is concerned, that's pretty much all this guy does. So honestly arguing and critiquing. Saying to somebody, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. What about this? What about this? What about this? You're not allowed to do that. That's trolling. I don't go on anyone's channel ever and just say, you're a flat earther, you're as dumb as a flat earther. You'll never find a single comment of mine that's not on a specific point. I never waste my time with any character assassination or any open-ended, vacuous nonsense like just saying, you're ignorant, you're ignorant. Yeah, I don't waste my time doing any of that. I make arguments. The arguments are clear, and they're pointed out, and they're never counter-argued. Again, what sense does it make for radar to magically, two radar sources, without going through a slit at all, to magically be able to interfere with each other? How come laser beams can't do it then? And your answer is going to be nothing. Crickets. You're not going to answer the question. Okay. Conveniently cling to the narrow definition of actually posting in a comment section. Unless you conveniently cling to the narrow definition of actually posting in a comment section. I don't even know what that means. The narrow definition of posts in a comment section. Okay, so he's saying that I am video trolling by making what I consider to be rather detailed counter arguments to assertions made. So again, to point out when somebody says we've proven it, and you point out that their proof is really, really weak and it's limited and it's not extensive and there's not much of it, you're trolling. So the prosecuting attorney, when he points out that the defendant's argument that I was out doing stuff at the time of the I was out doing stuff, that's not a very good alibi. Yeah. Okay, which isn't quite cricket now, is it? So again, there's no changing of goalpost here. Obviously, if I was just trolling, then I would just be mocking. Okay, I would just go on to Baldy Cat's video and just talk about how bald he is and how, you know, he looks kind of silly and blah, 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 blah. But I wouldn't get to any of the physics points actually made. I would just do the character assassination. Accuse him of being a Native American Holocaust denier or something like that. Accuse him of being British, and therefore you tried to assassinate honest, freedom-loving Americans. Yeah. Anyway. Whoopsie, that should be a science channel. That should be Science Channel, or perhaps the place where science comes to die. So again, it's the science will die here. That's the truth, and that's what the history is going to sort of write. Is that all of this really, what they call science, really should have been called religion 100 years ago, because that's what it became. And so science needs to be reborn. It needs to, like the phoenix, it needs to die, and it needs to be reborn, and it needs to do it right this time, and for good. And, you know, get out of this cycle of delusion where, you know, the humans always desperately turn the facts the way they want the facts to be. Instead of accepting the shitty world the way it shitty is, they have to keep fixing it with their delusions. Alright. Do us all a favor, Patrick, and clearly explain the wave function in layman terms so all of us mere mortals can comprehend the misunderstanding. Yeah, I mean, what is there to understand? Again, they say bullets go everywhere. So when you shoot a bullet out of a gun, it really went all the possible ways the bullet could have come out of the gun. Okay, and each one of those universes, the bullet hit a different person. I mean, it's just too silly. For no evidence. I mean, they just don't have any evidence. All the evidence is based on this notion, okay, of what the two slit is causing, and their projection of causes for the phenomenon. And their projection of causes is all this wacky crap. I've given you an alternative cause that's simple and mechanical. Photons are composite objects. When they go near a surface, they crash into electrons. The composite bits are sent to different locations, and in some locations the phase is put back together, in some locations it's not. There, simple explanation. No woo, no unicorns, no magic bullets. All right, so Patrick responds, amazing. If I explained it to a mere mortal, their flesh would melt like the scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Well, isn't that? So he's a movie file, of course, a sci-fi movie filer. You know, it's not, fuck having a movie about reality. Let's have a big adventure going after the Holy Grail and blah, 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 blah. You know, whatever the hell they were after. I mean, what a pile of crapola. The Lost Ark, right? The Ark of the Covenant or whatever they were after. You know, so he likes religious stories too. He likes his sci-fi to have a real religious thing in it, you know, where magical God melts your flesh and stuff. That makes it even more special. I'm not saying these aren't entertaining movies. I'm just saying that clearly when you have to resort to movie references, you've lost the argument. Okay, so bear in mind, he isn't just wrong, he is dishonest, so he's saying again, and he's misleading people. So there's absolutely no going to be any quotes of my dishonesty here at all. So of all the sentences that have come out of my mouth, there's not a single one that they're ever going to quote that's dishonest. They're just not going to be able to do it. I mean, I clearly am being honest with you when I say bent space doesn't make any sense to me. Bent nothing. So it's bent ether, if anything, right? So bent ether. Oh, so the little ether. So what's the ether made out of? Is it particles? Is it bricks? What the fuck's the ether made out of? And I'm going to just magically bend it just by existing. And I'm going to bend it in this weird way where, I mean, I know the space is three-dimensional, and yet I'm going to somehow bend it, which I'm going to bend 3 dimensions? I mean, how the hell is that going to work? So anyway, I'm obviously not being dishonest in pointing out that I think it is laughable, funny, ludicrous, silly. I don't know how anybody with a reasoning skills at all would fall for this and say this is a complete answer to the question of what's gravity. Some fucking thing is bent. No, I don't think so. There's something else happening. Something real is happening. Not that fake story. Oh, I mean, amazing. And he's misleading people. So they say their truth is God. That's all it is. And so you're misleading people if you start talking about evolution. And that's all you're saying here. It's I'm just the first evolutionist. There's always got to be somebody who does it right. Okay, you know, there's other people that can make the argument, but they make it, you know, they got flaws in their own little theory. And so yeah, I'm doing it right. And pointing out not only how their physics is silly and wrong, but pointing out that here's an explanation that fits. And yeah, it took me 10 years to get the pieces in place, most of them. And, you know, every day it gets better and better. And it fits, it works. It's a model that actually produces the results, and it produces it with a bunch of simple functions. 2 plus 2 plus 2 physics. Simple. So anyway. So just an accusation, again, more just slanderous accusations, you know. It's just, so again, you can't say, okay, he honestly believes it's silly. No, he doesn't say that. You know, he says I'm wrong and I'm dishonest. So he has to throw in the extra. Why? So again, if you're riding on the truth train, why do you have to resort to these cheats? Okay. While I appreciate the response, Patrick, so it's a satire, a simple answer to the question would have been decent of you rather than the dodge and misdirection. Well, it would have been decent for him to say, okay, well, look, I can cite that it's pretty strong evidence, and in this video they explain the evidence, and it's really strong evidence, or something, right? But yeah, there's nothing. Patrick responds, no, humor was the best way to go. So again, this is just, you know, if you can't argue it, mock it. You know, that's all. All right, Patrick Taylor. So believing you are witty is more important than decency. I appreciate your clarification. And we have a response to that, which is, I was decently witty. I think that is close enough. So he has a high opinion of his verbal skills, frankly, because I didn't see either the wit or the decent, or I didn't see anything. Right? There was no argument made. There was no evidence presented. There was no argument explaining how You've misunderstood how powerful the evidence is. That, you know, no, there's no. We have more than the two slit experiment. No, you don't really. Frankly, it's all you've got is your silly interpretation of a very simple experiment. And we clearly see who's distorting the truth, Metamorph. If we go out on the internet and see who's distorting the evidence to make their argument, we'll see that every single physicist is doing it with these distorted and silly descriptions of the experiment. And then let's talk about the detector experiment. Do you think a real physicist somewhere really attempted to passively detect a photon? Like, I'm going to catch it in a net and you know. You really think that happened somewhere, fucktard? Because it didn't. Anyway. Let's see. I find it quite surprising how much opposition there is out there to the idea that proton-electron arrangements have anything to do with dipoles, magnetism. Yeah, the idea that that the atom itself is the thing that becomes a magnet, and that's what causes magnetism. I mean, to think the electrons are controlling it is, you know, what sense does that make? But that's actually what they think it is. They think all the electrons inside of something turn to their dipole momenty thing, and they all arrange, and that's what's causing it. It's not the fact that the atoms are actually polar. You know, if it was a dipole of the electrons, you could argue that almost anything should become strongly magnetic. I mean, I should be able to make anything into a magnet. How come it's only 3 metals, right? I mean, nickel, cobalt, and iron, or something like that, right? That's it. Yeah. It's incredibly bizarre. I mean, it should be unquestionably obvious. They don't prove their contrary claims, and yet they sit there and mock. It is the same old story, I guess. Yes, as humans suck, and we live in a suckiverse, and it's just unfortunate that everything is shit. Yeah, it's just horrible that there's nothing done right, nothing well, nothing good. It's just all a bunch of shit. It's just so depressing. Alright, so hard. It's weird because it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense that magnetism is a charged phenomenon. I mean, clearly the two things have... Again, Maxwell demonstrated this interrelationship, and yet they're kind of overtly denying it and pretending that magnetism is some different mechanism. And it's hidden inside the electron. The electron's controlling the magnetic future of the universe. I mean, it's just too silly. And their theories make no sense. Sucks that people are so stubborn and prefer the wrong answer as long as their ego isn't lowered. You know, I don't know what this is about ego. It's about devotions and attachment. And there's, you know, the underlying point I think has to be emphasized that the only thing that makes me different than them is I'm a real atheist. You know, I mean, that's what seems clear to me anyway. That underlying all of this bullshit is that these people who claim to be atheists really aren't atheists. They're wooicists. They need some kind of story that gives them free will, and that are not robots. The whole thing isn't just a silly, you know, clusterfuck of reckless waste. They need to feel good about their existence, and the only way you can feel good about it is to pretend it's something entirely different than what it actually is. And that's the truth of it. Somewhere in underlying all of this is they have a preference that the universe be silly, because silly gives them excuses, and you know, unsilly doesn't give them any outs. They have to be responsible for every word they spoke and every deed they did and everything, and it all counts, and it all just puts us in a terribly uncomfortable position of just being the cause of so many unnecessarily horrible effects. Anyway, they just don't want to look at the suck. Alright, sucks that people are so stubborn and prefer the wrong answer as long as their ego isn't lowered. So again, yeah, it's more of an ego. I guess that's the other part of it, though, is that they've obviously invested their whole life being a Yankee fan, for example. And they just can't switch. You know, and it just doesn't matter how much evidence there is that the Yankees suck, right? That they're just bought. You know, it's the pussy little bought Trumpy kind of game. Like, I inherited it. You know, it's not earned. It's not anything. They're not the real fighters and the real, the real underdogs. They're the obnoxious, spawn of the rich team. You know, they're just, lame as fuck. You know, they can't do it without this twice the budget. You know, without twice as much luxury and twice as good stuff and twice as much everything. They can't compete worth shit. So it's like a horse that, needs a head start to get around the track, Ooh, you're a fan of that horse? No, I'm a fan of the horse that actually runs the race. Yeah, the real horse. Yeah, so they've backed a sissy, and they don't want to admit, oh, I spent my whole life rooting for a scummy little sissy. Ugh. Okay. So he as a response to that argument, yeah, they're all sissies, he gets, okay, fanboy. And what are you? You're just a fanboy for a silly little unicorn universe of Wooverse. That's all. There's no evidence you're doing anything else but just fanboying. You can't make a rational argument pointing out how any of the evidence has any integrity or any substance to it at all. And I've pointed out, I've shown you not cracks, I've shown you crevices, I've shown you canyons of bad evidence. Completely debunked all of this two-slit nonsense. I mean, it's gone, it's done, it's over. It's so easily understood of just being scatter. Photons are obviously composite objects. They obviously travel through space, occupying a piece of space in the sense that they have a length and they have a polarization. And none of it makes any sense from your theory that one electron creates the whole giant photon. How could it possibly do that? How does it make any sense? How can it yell into space in that way? How can it possibly affect space and cause something to travel through space, just taking up this space? So how sometimes this thing a million times smaller than the polarization creates this, it yells, and somehow the yell only gets this big and exactly that big, and then travels the same way for billions of miles at the same exact dimensions. How does it do that? Could you draw me a picture? No, because it's preposterously silly. So anyway, there really seems to be little point because, like I said, we haven't really seen one honest event here. We haven't seen one event that needs to take place where somebody who has some physics knowledge says, yeah, you know what, I never really thought about it, but yeah, it is all poorly evidenced. Really poorly evidenced. I mean, that's why they came up with all those different interpretations, is because the evidence is so fuzzy and mushy that you can make up anything out of it. And, I at least concede, the evidence for their theory is weak. I mean, they really should have more than Eddington's experiment to point to. There really should be more on the evidence table than, a piece of evidence from 1919. Yeah, they really should. Okay. So that's probably enough of a video. I could go into other things and do other things, but it is all just fatiguing and annoying. I mean, I'll do the atom thing just real quick, just because it's, it's just like I was watching. I did a little research on, this whole where they got the idea of inventing what the hell's it called, the fine structure constant and the variables that go into that, and it all goes back to, again, de Broglie and giving, turning momentum into frequency and saying the two things are the same thing, and then creating the Planck constant, and then creating the less than Planck constant, where you divide it by 2 pi, which is, 6.2, right? I mean, they're real numbers, these pi things, and it just turns out that some of these numbers are conveniently awful close to 1. So when you divide, Planck's constant by 6, it ends up being 1. 1.00 some a little tiny number. And obviously that, in an equation, that almost 1 thing, can be very convenient to just move an almost 1 around in an equation. But anyway, so we have I have to put the other thing on. Mouse, click there. Yes, that'll work. All right, so the atom. And even the way they describe energy levels. Okay, so we have this idea that there's electrons fly around, and they can fly in different places. Now, I would argue the flying part is just silly. It doesn't really happen. But the idea that there are these places, okay, where it can be comfortable and uncomfortable, I would argue would be just part of the obvious geometry of any complex object. So I won't use the hydrogen atom as an example, because the hydrogen atom, frankly, doesn't hang around as a single atom. It doesn't interact, it likes to combine with other hydrogen atoms. Okay, and that's the way you're going to find it, is combined with other hydrogen atoms, more than one atom stuck together. And obviously it's going to behave a certain way when it's combined with other hydrogen atoms than it would as an independent or individual hydrogen atom. So, in my opinion, you can't really analyze it in any other state than the state that it's in, and the state that it's in is combined with other hydrogen atoms. See, they say they have a cyclotron, one of the things where you move it around, where one electron is in the cyclotron. I can't find that experiment, but that's part of all this crap of how they measure this. Now, do you actually believe they can put one electron in the cyclotron? One electron? Yeah. Well, anyway, so I could look at this and I could say, okay, I could turn this into a wave. So this is what de Broglie and friends did, right? They turned this into a wave. So they say the position isn't, it isn't in one of these positions. So first, you have this idea that the thing's spinning. And then they take the spin and put a wave on it, make it go, give it a factor of position. And so you could sort of understand that would be the same thing as saying that the electron can be here, 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 or here. But I would argue that I think they physically actually have to be somewhere. But regardless. So let's just say you had an electron that was here and here, here, and here. And the theory is correct that the electrons are just repelling each other. And the fact is once I have enough of them, this one can't get any closer without getting closer to these two things that it's repelling against. I guess I should have drawn that center thing as plus. And so I would argue that, see, these energy levels are just based on the fact that there's only certain positions out here that are going to work for an electron. Right? So once I establish positions inside, then I establish the positions on the outside, and then the geometry would go a step further. The one out here, they would have to be here and here and here and here. Because you have to make the geometry add up. Now, see, I could subdivide this and say it can't be here. See, it's open here, but this is blocked, so it has two locations, here and here, that are viable, as pathways to the plus without hitting too much minus, right? So it would just be about geometry, okay? And the number of electrons you can fit just has to do with line of sight geometry. You could just say, it's obviously a three-dimensional molecule, so you have these different angles that it can create. This is a cube. You could argue, in the reality, so there's different ways you can understand it. But the point is that, yeah, there would be standard distances that are going to be dictated. And so their argument is every time an electron jumps, that is, it exchanges. It goes from here to the interior, that a photon is released. And it's really the opposite, right? Because these are the energetic. These are the ones under high pressure, the ones on the inside, because they're really attracted to the proton because they're closer. So there's even more force pushing on them to go, in. There's lower pressure here than there is here. And the rebound, the pushing back pressure has to be stronger because it has to resist that pushing in pressure. So these are obviously the high energy ones. They think the ones that are high energy are the ones out here, when we know that these are the ones that are just casually collected, that a stray electron can just hang out here. It's just be loosely connected. And that the deeper you're sharing electrons, the deeper your connection the two atoms are going to have, and the harder it's going to break. But I'm just saying that makes so much sense. And then obviously the whole idea of this being magnetic, in the sense that obviously from some perspectives it's going to look positive. You're going to be able to see the positive. And from some perspectives, there's going to be a negative, a negative, a negative, a negative. It's going to look more negative. And that atoms are going to end up polarizing. Now, they can be very weakly polarized or very strongly polarized. So the argument isn't it, metals like iron and cobalt and nickel, the atoms is polarized by its nature. It's very polar. So you can understand that it has a, it's like a rectangle. You could understand it's like a rectangle. It has a decisive end, positive, positive. So it has decisive polarity. And that, yes, if I mix them all, no magnetism. But if I arrange all the atoms the same way, if I can do that, if there's a mechanism that allow them to line up, well, they would have to stagger, of course, but whatever. That I can create magnetism. So anyway, I mean, it just, and their counter argument is, shut up, fuck you. That's their counter argument. There's nothing else here. That opposes our religion. We need more waves in there. Why? You don't need them. They don't serve a purpose. All right. So anyway. It's all futile. Probably. It's appearing to be so. So anyway, I'll just go back to, we'll get rid of that. And, oh, there it is. Okay, so we can move this over here. Yeah, that looks nice. All right, so till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. Again, if you have good evidence for their theories, show me. Link me to the good evidence. Show me the video that shows the experiment for the magnetic moment of the electron. Because Stern Gerlach isn't going to do it, though. And there actually aren't any videos on Stern Gerlach, right? There's nobody actually doing the experiment. So we can't even watch the experiment being done. That's how lame the internet is. That's how lame the science is. They don't even videotape when they do something. We proved it, but we didn't videotape it. I mean, kind of pathetic, isn't it? Kind of pathetic that you can't videotape you doing the experiment. The scientists can't figure out how to do that. A little GoPro camera or something, You can buy them so cheap, you can get a camera so cheap on the internet for the last 15 years. It's dirt cheap. It doesn't have to be high definition. All we have to do is see the scientists, see the instrument, see them conducting the experiment. Is that difficult? Apparently. Because the physics is that bad. I have to move this over so it's balanced. Alright, anyway, we'll get rid of that because it's probably killing the frame rate. Anyway, so till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. I'll endeavor to persevere, but, it just is so funny. I mean, I always sort of had the impression, even as a kid, that, I've been dumped on a shitty planet for I obviously committed some huge trespass in the universe. And I'm being punished by being thrown onto this piece of shit called Earth with these retards. I mean, I really hate to draw the conclusion that I'm just an incredibly superior being, but it's just so obvious that I just can't draw any other conclusion. I mean, you people are just such lying scum. I mean, again, not to admit that the evidence is weak. That's not going to hurt you that much to admit. Well, yeah, I wish the evidence was better. You can't even say that. I do wish the evidence was better. That we did have some better evidence. unlike evolution, even Darwin could have said, well, he couldn't even say it just because, frankly, the evidence from the fact that we were unnaturally selecting and already breeding animals by the very process of selection sort of made it was sort of already a proof that, well, if we can do the selecting process, obviously nature can. And by the crude standard of survival of the fittest. I mean, that's just too duh. You almost don't need any genetic proof. You have the proof right there, in a simple argument that, fuck, what do you think's been going on? I mean, the evidence of the island formation, and that gives you the geological timeline. The Galapagos Islands just give you a geological timeline that's quite obviously more than 10,000 years. Yeah, but anyway, I mean, it just adds up so quickly too. There's only one rational conclusion. All right, so anyway, till the next time and such and so forth.